Hello and welcome back once again to the Inquisitor podcast with me, Marcus Cauchi. Today, my return guest is Matt Gaskin. In today's conversation, we're going to focus on how Matt has identified how you can use AI in order to create trust with the AI search engines. Because if a real buyer asked AI who to recommend, would your business even make the shortlist? And if the answer is no, then you really need to think again. So we're going to go down a few rabbit holes. We're going to give you some detail, but Matt's argument is really simple, and I'm hopeful that it's uncomfortable. Your digital presence is no longer a brochure. It's a commercial signal system. So without any further ado, Matt, welcome back.
Hey, Marcus, thank you very much for having me back.
Pleasure. Would you mind giving the audience a little bit of 60 seconds on your recent history?
Yeah, sure. So I left the corporate world. Obviously, you can probably tell I'm a Brit, but I live in the US. I left the corporate world a couple of years ago, and I bought a t-shirt business. We design and print t-shirts mainly for higher education, but also for businesses and some retail clients too. But mainly, we're education focused. I started running the business last year, and people who've listened to the previous podcast episodes, I'm a bit of a lean nut. So I started running the business with the focus on taking out all the waste and just focusing on the processes that deliver value to the customer. So let's strip it right back to the bare bones and figure it out. I didn't want to get into marketing and as many sales as I possibly could, because I didn't want to feed those customers into a broken set of processes. It's just going to create a lot of noise, a lot of chaos. So the first 9 months was really spent leaning out the process, figuring out what would work and what wouldn't work, improving the tech stack particularly so that things were a lot more automated. And at the end of the year, I began to focus on marketing. I thought, okay, we're in a much better place now. The business is not taking up so much of my time. Let's look at marketing. So we looked at Google ads and Facebook ads, and that didn't work. So, and that would kind of lead us into the rest of the conversation. But that's pretty much the last 12 months.
Okay, so what was the commercial problem that made you realize your website wasn't just a website problem?
So the commercial problem was the same commercial problem that I think pretty much any business owner, particularly a small business owner, faces. How do I get more business? Now, as I said, our focus was very much universities and colleges. The business, Awesome Eyes Tees, was built on college campuses. It was built on a college campus in Miami by the previous owner. It has a very good kind of personal touch with all its customers. So it's got a very loyal customer base, but relatively small in terms of all the US colleges. And obviously, I wanted to get more customers. Now, when college professionals who are in that role buying t-shirts, when they find a good vendor, they tend to stick with them. And I'm not arrogant enough to believe that we're the only good vendor. No, there are lots of good vendors out there. There's lots of good competition. There are other people who do a very good job. And so once you are in with an organization, you're in there for a long time. Unless somebody moves, because you don't service the organization, you service the person who buys the t-shirts from you. They're the people that you have the relationship with. When they move, your sales tend to move with them. So the commercial problem was, how can we attract more business? And so I began thinking about it. I mentioned that I'd run Google ads and Facebook ads and got absolutely nothing. Just a lot of very low intention, high noise, tire kicking retail clients dropping messages in our Facebook page or via our website, all of which you have to reply to, 0% of which I actually converted, and many of which were just not qualified, just immediate disqualification from the garbage and spam that they were put. Even with spam blockers, you get a lot of garbage and spam. So it's just a lot of noise. It's a huge time sink, and that's time that you are going to not have to deliver value to your customers who actually do want to buy shirts from you.
And never get back.
So when I looked at the problem, I thought, well, I've got to stop doing this. So I actually turned off all the Google and Facebook ads. And I sat there and thought about it and thought, when was the last time I really Googled or searched for anything on Facebook? I can't think of it. The only time I use Google Maps really is if I'm looking for a business locally and I want to see whether, how many stars they have, whether, it's a 4.5 or a 4.8 or whatever it might be. So that's really the only time I search for businesses using Google. And it's always very local. So I thought, well, if I was a campus professional now and I wanted to, and maybe I was, thinking about changing, maybe I've got disappointed by my local or my regular vendor, I would go to AI, because that's what everybody's going to do now. They're going to go to ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity or Claude or whatever it might be. And they're going to say, give me a list of the top 10 vendors for t-shirts or custom clothing for colleges. and the AI is going to give them that list. And so I went to ChatGPT and I said, if I was a campus professional and I'm looking for custom clothing for my campus, for a campus event I'm having for my students, would Awesomized Tees be on that list if it's a top 10? No, absolutely not. And then, of course, ChatGPT kind of massages your ego a little bit. So it's not because of the value of the service you provide. We're sure you do a great job. It's just because of this, that, and the other thing. And that started a 6-month journey down a rabbit hole, figuring out, okay, exactly how is AI making its decision? Because I've heard some things that are, I mean, frankly, nonsense about all you need to do is you need to create a blog post, or you need to comment on a public forum like Reddit, and with a link to your website, and you'll be top ranked right away in AI. That is absolute nonsense. That is not true. Now, you mentioned so I started thinking about, well, how can I change Awesomized Tees' website to be more AI friendly? And I'll tell you right now, Marcus, that anybody who goes to Awesomized Tees' website right now, it is not AI friendly. I have come to the conclusion that the site actually needs a complete rebuild. I added a load of content that was necessary to add, and it raised the score a little bit. So it's improved the site a little bit from a readability point of view, for AI's point of view. But the site had an awful lot of problems. It wasn't crawlable. It was very inconsistent, very imprecise. It was confusing. It had a lot of indexed pages that were unlinked, so that they're known as orphan pages, left over from the build phase, with addresses in Germany. So the AI thought I was based in Hamburg, not in Brooksville, Florida. So there was a lot of confusion around it. Now you've got to, so when an AI sees that kind of signal, it's just, well, hang on, are you in Germany or Florida? It's just going to dismiss you immediately. Now, I didn't even know I had that problem until I had worked with a couple of different models, not just ChatGPT, but a couple of models. I use Grok as well because I just find it very objective and very good. Until I built a tool that I could crawl my own site with and unearth all of these problems. And once I built that tool, I realized, oh, hang on a minute, I have a really powerful tool here that can do it for any business's website, any entity. And having spoken to a couple of web developers, I can tell you that they are still stuck via probably inertia in the old SEO, Facebook ads, Google ads world. There are some good ones out there. There are some good ones who are beginning to understand that AI is going to take over, and that you must make your website to be AI friendly.
What should a founder or sales leader look for if they suspect that their marketing is producing noise and activity, but not real opportunities? What are the clues?
Okay, a very simple test would be, let's say you were a title company over here. They have title companies over here who manage the titles for real estate. So if you buy a house, you have a title company that checks the title on your house, which is a document that basically tells the potential buyer that there are no liens against the property. There's nothing like sinkhole.
So they do the search.
Yes, basically. Now, if you were so if you're a title company and you're in, let's say you're in Miami, and you want to go to an AI, go to any model and try a couple of them, because they all see things slightly differently, and say, give me a top 10 list of title companies in Miami, and it'll tell you. And if you're not on that list, then you've probably got a problem. Now, having said that, there are the bigger companies. Real estate agents over here, for example. There are some national chains, Remax and Coldwell Banker. They're enormous retail estate agents. We call them estate agents in the UK, obviously. So there are enormous chains, and they are always going to appear in the top 10. But not necessarily, because it depends the context on what you're looking for. So if you are a smaller organization, then if you were to say, I'm looking for an estate agent, with a really good personal touch. I don't want to use a big chain. I want to use somebody who's a smaller business that I'm going to get a better service from. And if you put that prompt, that context into the prompt, you could certainly, as a small estate agent in my hometown of Market Harborough in Leicestershire, you could definitely pop up as the preferred option if your website is configured correctly. But let's say you are a small estate agent a small independent estate agent in Market Harborough, and you pride yourself on your personal service, and you think you provide an excellent personal service dedicated to your clients, and you serve both, the Market Harborough and surrounding areas. It's lovely around there, the Langtons and out into southern Leicestershire, North Northamptonshire. if you do that and you think you provide that great service, then go to your AI model and say, give me a really customer focused, not big chain estate agent in the Market Harbor area. And if you don't appear on that list, then again, yeah, you probably have a problem. I couldn't necessarily tell you what that problem is, immediately, but if you don't appear on that list, you probably have a visibility issue. Either you're not clear, or you're not precise on the service that you provide, or you're not consistent, or it could be all three.
Okay, so what does a business need to be clear about before AI has any reason to recommend it?
It needs to be absolutely clear on the service it provides and the typical customer it services. So I'll take you back to the Automized Teas website. Anybody listen to this podcast goes to that website. I don't expect you to buy any t-shirts. I would like you actually to look at it as an example of what not to do. So if you go to the Automized Teas website now, the business grew up selling t-shirts into colleges, and then the business owner knows other people in Miami where he lived, and they have businesses too, and they start ordering some shirts from him. Then you have people who I know actually who will buy t-shirts for events, like maybe it's a baby shower, or they're having some kind of pool party and they all want t-shirts. We can do that. And the danger that business owners in that position are in is they start to creep away from the core product or the core service. The core service is selling t-shirts to higher education. Anything beyond that or outside of that is a nice to have, but we are not going to target that. But the business owner gets into his mindset drifts into the position of, we sell t-shirts to anybody. We don't specialize with higher education. It doesn't matter if you're a business, if you're an individual, if you're an industrial client who wants printed PPE, if you're if you're a college, we can sell t-shirts to anybody. And so if you go to the Automized Teas website now, the vibe is definitely, we sell t-shirts to anybody, not we sell t-shirts to colleges. And so the entire website needs to be rewritten around being very specific about the markets you serve. And then after that, you need to be very specific about the answers that you give. The one thing that listeners, I hope you take away from this podcast is, with AI, you must lead with value. I'm going to say that again. You must lead with value. You have to provide buyer answers on your website. If you ask a business owner or anybody in sales and marketing, what's the most important page on your website? Well, the homepage. It's got to be super, super splashy and human readable and really nice. The homepage is, from an AI's perspective, the homepage is very important, very, very important. You need to nail exactly the service that you provide or the product you provide on the homepage, and you need to do it very, very quickly. The next most important page is probably your FAQ page, because SEO is called search. It stands for search engine optimization. AI is AEO, answer engine optimization. The operative word being answer. AIs are looking for answers. And so when you have an FAQ page, you can list a load of those typical buyer questions in your FAQs. And the AIs can go and read those answers, and they can see that you are being transparent. And that lifts your trust score. It also lifts your integrity score, because you are providing answers on your website clearly and freely for anybody to see. So that's kind of the answer to your question. You must be absolutely clear on the service that you provide and the conditions under which you provide it. So the answer is the typical commercial questions that you would get.
So you've answered why getting found is no longer enough. What's the difference between being visible and recommendable?
Being visible is, you have a website. The models can see you. Now, a common misconception is that the models will go and crawl your site. They actually will not go and crawl your site. They can briefly look at your site. If I said, go and look at the homepage of such and such a site, it will go and do a quick take. Something that that's called a public lens assessment. It's a very, very quick tap on the homepage. And typically they're going to get a truncated version of the homepage, meaning a shortened version. So they're not going to see the full thing. That website is visible. But if you don't have those, if you don't clearly lay out the products and services you provide, and you don't answer those buyer questions, and you don't encode that into the back end of your website in a special way that is not on the front end, you cannot see it from the front end, it's more for developers, that answers all those questions in a very easily machine readable and machine digestible way, then you're not going to get recommended. Because in the situation where it was down to perhaps two competitors, because some people are super lazy. They're going to say to the model, I don't want a list of 5 plumbers, I just want one. Give me the best plumber. And they're going to get one answer. Now, if it comes down to the wire and you've got maybe 10 plumbing websites and all of them are kind of terrible, but one's got maybe better FAQs, well, the FAQ is the one that's going to get recommended. So the difference between visibility and recommendability is it can be marginal. It can be marginal if you have a website, if you have a collection of companies or have kind of very average websites. But you can engineer your website in such a way that you would be the absolute standout default choice no matter what. So let me explain that a little more. The business that I've set up and that operates both in the US and a little plug, but operates both in the US and in the UK is called Clarity Digital Advisory. It's claritydigitaladvisory.com. And we provide, one of the services we provide is an audit, and it will audit you, it will audit your website out of 100 in terms of the integrity of the site, the kind of signal integrity, the competitor analysis, kind of your competitive positioning, the amount of answers that you give to buyer questions. And it will give a management summary as well, because a lot of it's very, very kind of technical. It's, you're going to, if you're a business owner, you're going to take a quick glance at it, you're just going to give it to your website team, your developer, and you say, you read that, I understand that. Now, anything above kind of 40% out of 100, you're visible, maybe, but you're not going to get recommended. Anything from maybe 60 plus, you might get recommended in edge cases if the context of the prompt that the users put in kind of fits what you're doing. Anything from 80 plus, you're coming into national elite, almost default recommendation territory. So to give you some context, if you apply what I've learned, bearing in mind the Automized Teas website is terrible, and there's plenty of trust signals on it, because I say, hey, we've worked with all of these universities, and this is some of the designs we did last year, and all the universities agreed to have added to that we could share these designs with you, so they know that it's so the AI can read that and say, okay, the universities will agree to it, that's fine. And so there's plenty of trust there. But even without that trust, I set up Clarity Digital Advisory, following the system and what I've learned, and I scored 82 out of 100 on first audit, which is getting on for national elite status, almost default recommendation, without any case studies on it at all. So if you work in a kind of business where case studies would be useful, AI really loves to see case studies. They also really like to see case studies that are not anonymous. Now, I have a client right now. Let's just say they're in the Great White North, they're north of the border in Canada, and I have agreed with them to use them as a case study. When the engagement's finished, we will use them as a case study. And that will not be anonymous, because AI loves to see, this company helped, this business here helped this client over here, and they did that with them. Now, if you have a very high trust relationship with your customers, that's something that as a business owner or somebody in your director of marketing, director of sales, you should certainly consider. Could we partner with you? Now, some businesses are not going to want to, you need to be careful about who you ask, because some businesses are not necessarily going to want to partner with you. I wouldn't have done. If somebody providing my service came to Automized Teas and told me that actually, when I initially crawled my site, it wasn't even crawlable by bots. It had terrible issues, really, really poor. It was basically not visible. They didn't even know, practically didn't know I existed. I might be a little hesitant to say, yeah, okay, you can do that, because you're not laying everything bare, but you're kind of telling the world, yeah, we weren't really controlling that, and our website was terrible, and we didn't really have any idea about that. So some customers might not. Now, as it happens, this client in Canada, he has actually a very strong site, but there are some things he can definitely do to tighten it up. So that's how that's kind of the service that we provide. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but you did. You crack on.
So what I'm getting is that there's a visibility risk, there's a misalignment risk, and there's an evaluation risk. What do those three things mean in practical terms? Can you define them and maybe give an example from a real website?
Okay, so I might have to ask you to remind me which one as we go through. I'll do visibility first, and you can remind what the second one is. Visibility is very, very simple. Are you visible? Can I crawl your website? Can I understand what it is you do? And they're the kind of questions that the AI would ask. Are you actually visible? Can I see you? Can I call your website? That's it.
Okay. And misalignment?
Misalignment is when the AI starts getting confused about what you do. Well, you say you do this, but you've got signals all over your website that signal something different. So automized teas would be a great example of misalignment. We actually focus purely on colleges. If you go to our website, you wouldn't know that. So you are not going to get recommended for colleges because it's confused.
Okay, because that's interesting, because if you're a generalist, that probably works against you.
To some extent, yes. Now you can certainly create pages that focus that, but if you were a general digital agency, for example, you could say we provide these services, blah 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 blah, and you're kind of industry agnostic as to who your clients are, but you need to provide as much information as you can. But yeah, being a generalist, it can hurt you a little bit, but there are still things that you can definitely fix.
Okay, and then the final one is evaluation risk.
Okay, so evaluation risk is very simply we discussed this on a previous call that we didn't record, but the evaluation risk is it basically comes from the other two. Visibility, kind of, can I understand you? Are you consistent? Are you being clear about what you provide? If you have a website, and I have a friend I have a business contact in Florida. He is absolutely not ashamed in saying that he is building his business to sell to PE. And he recognized that his website was terrible, and he was concerned about the valuation that PE would give him if their website was terrible. And his old website wasn't great; it was pretty bad. So that's evaluation. If you are looking to grow your business, now Marcus, you disagree with me. You kind of frowned a little bit when I said this, but I think that if they are not doing it, PE firms will start doing it. They will say, well, your digital presence online is your front of house. Particularly if you're a service business selling a digital product or a digital service, your website and all of your other entities, by the way, because you can link from your website, you can link in all of your social media profiles and any other presence that you have online, so that the AI sees it as a consistent whole, which brings in further problems because you have to ensure that you are totally consistent across all platforms. But the valuation risk is that a private equity firm might look at that and say, well, you've really not got a very good digital presence. And that is going to affect the valuation to some degree, because another thing that I want people to take away from this is AI values time in the saddle. There are no quick fixes in AI. You can't just spit. Now, I said, well, I spun up a website and scored 8 out of 100. You can do that. But if you've already got a digital presence and you've already established yourself, it takes time to re-engineer. So there is a problem with, if I want to turn my business around really quickly, or I want to turn my digital presence around really quickly, that's not necessarily going to work, because AI is going to remember what you were like 3 or 4 months ago. So if you turn around, if you were looking to sell your business to PE and they said you don't have a great digital presence, that's not a problem you can fix quickly. So that's the valuation risk.
So what's the runway then? Are we talking 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Honestly, it depends how frequently the search engines crawl your site. Something that a lot of people don't realize is, I said earlier, the AIs can't necessarily crawl your site. They will do a very, very quick public lens assessment when they tap your URL to just see what's there. But most of the information they are going to get from the search engines. The search engines will routinely crawl your site, typically every 4 to 6 weeks. Could be less frequent, could be more frequent. You don't really know. It might be months. And they will crawl the entire site and gather all the artifacts, all the data, and they will effectively store it as a file of metadata. So when you ask AI to go tap a site, it'll look at the homepage very quickly, but it will more often than not go to the search engine and retrieve all of the data that the search engine has already pulled and retrieved. It's a much faster way of doing it. So in terms of how long does it take to turn around, it really depends how frequently first of all, how quickly you update your site and make the corrections, and then how frequently the search engines crawl it. So the likes of Bing and Google. Now, just on that subject, there are options out there for people who want quick wins. And I would never ever, I would never trash these companies. I think that they provide a valuable service. there are what we would call, you mentioned quick wins at the start of this podcast, and there are what we call content generators. I'm not going to mention any by name, but they are AI content generators. They are designed to, they will do things like this. They will spin up pages that answer on your domain, that answer specific user queries coming through AI. And so the listener might be thinking, well, that sounds great. We just use one of them. Well, that does sound great. But the reason that I didn't go down that route when I started asking this question was I had just killed all my Google ads and my Facebook ads because it just generated a lot of noise. Now, these people, these potential customers have gone to my website, entered their name, their telephone number, their email address, what they were looking for, and hit submit. And I never converted any of them. Am I to believe that somebody who puts a prompt into AI is necessarily a higher intent prospect than somebody who's gone and filled in a load of information and given me a load of personal information and hit submit and sent it to my website? So for my business, I don't think that works. Now, for what I would call reactive, I call it panic businesses, but let's call it, say, reactive service businesses, plumbers, electricians, so trades, but more specifically service trades, plumbers, electricians, pest control, that kind of thing, where you have a problem, you need it fixed now. Those content generators might work. But for me, I want to build a business entity online that is of a much higher intent, a much higher quality, very, very specific. And actually, coincidentally, if you focus on building your entity, your digital entity online, you will be able to rely on those services a little less because you won't need them quite so much. But I just wanted to kind of mention those services.
Okay.
They are alternatives.
So what are the first signs that a website is confusing buyers and or AI?
Again, it's the same thing. If you type a prompt in and you look for yourself and you're not coming up, you might be confusing. It might simply be confusing. Or you can always just go and ask AI. If let's say you put that prompt and you say, I don't show up. Because I did this. Okay, if I was a college professional and I was looking for shirts, would I show up? No. Why not? Then you can just say, I own Awesome Iced Teas. Why would I not show up? And then it's going to tell you, well, because you're not clear, maybe you're not clear about this, or we can't call you, or such and such a thing. Now, you cannot go and ask an AI to crawl your site and tell you everything that's wrong with it. They won't do that. They can't do that. They will tell you that they can't do that, which is why I had to build an application that crawls and retrieves all this key data and then use AI to interpret that, effectively interpret that information at a very deep digital signal integrity level. So if you are trying to optimize your site for AI, because frankly, as long as it's reasonably human readable, my perspective is, and people can disagree with me if they want, that's fine. My perspective is in 5-10 years time, people are just going to go and they're going to tell their favorite agent, just go and buy this. This is your budget. This is when it needs to be here. They're not actually going to human beings for low investment purchases. Obviously, for business to business, they're always going to have purchasing departments and salespeople, and people are going to know people. And there's a lot more information that has to go back and forth. But for the kind of lower intention or the lower investment, that's going to happen. So I wanted to build a system that would speak to AI. If you want to sell to AI, you have to speak AI's language. And AI doesn't speak in terms of pretty pictures, nice HTML, a nice layout. It speaks in terms of answers and value. What value do you provide? Who do you serve? Give me evidence that you serve them, and give me answers in a form that I can understand. And so I had to be very, very intentional about that. So if you are not getting those shortlists, or you can then, if you're not getting on those shortlist prompts, you can ask AI. You can then go and ask AI, okay, why? And you can kind of dig into a little bit. That is probably the best way of figuring out if your business is clear or not, or if you may have any clarity issues.
Okay, so what are the signs of leakage on websites that owners and marketing people tend to ignore or not recognize?
So one of the things might be talk to your development team. I can't speak for all developers everywhere. Some developers are very good, some developers are very bad. And most developers will do basic tests like crawling the site. Now, is the site crawlable before they upload it? Most good developers will do that, but some won't. I found out that the people who built my website left 15 open pages in there full of junk. full of placeholder text and addresses in Hamburg. So I would really probably talk to them and as a first person, just check. Now, if people really wanted to check for leakage, they can contact me and we can definitely see if they've got any leaks. One of the other things might be something really simple, really, really simple. AIs like to have a contact information. They like to have contact information about the business, and they call it NAP, name, address, phone number. Your NAP has to be consistent across all of your entities. And when I say consistent, I mean really consistent. So you can't have, for example, the phone number to contact Clarity Digital Advisory is 727-492-9509. You can't have open parentheses, 727 close parentheses, 492-9509, and then have it.
So the format has to be identical.
And have it formatted somewhere different on LinkedIn. Believe it or not, AI sees that as lack of clarity, as inconsistency, as entity drift. You're drifting away. You're not quite sure. So that is a sign of leakage. Your address, for example, let's say I have an address.
Okay. Let me stop you there because we're getting too technical.
Sure.
So if AI is looking for answers for value, audience clarity, evidence, what are the 5 things that every website must state clearly on the page? And give me the non-technical one, no schema, no crawlability.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The one thing, the 2 things you should say on your homepage, who you are and what you do. That's number 1. Okay. What your business is and what you do. You should have some form of contact information. You should have a name or an email, even if it's info@, that's fine, but keep that consistent across all of your entities. And ideally a phone number and a physical address if you can. You don't have to have it down to the street. I run my business from home. I don't want to put my full street address, but you should have that contact information.
Okay.
You should also have an FAQ. You should have an FAQ page. So that'll be probably number 3. You need, as I said at the start, you need to lead with value. You have to tell your customers what it is you do and the conditions under which you do it. So answering all the questions that they might have about delivery and lead times and what do we do if we cancel.
I would suggest that who do you serve page would be a good idea as well.
Yes.
So what does a good who do you serve page look like versus a weak one?
A good who you serve page is good who you serve page is very specific. So I have on Awesomized Teas, one of the things that we did to lift the score a little bit was to create a who you serve page for the different verticals that we serve, with the primary one being colleges. So there's one for colleges, there's one as a support for business, and then there's one as a support for social media influencers. And then there's pages like, a blog page. Blog pages, I know it might sound very, early noughties, but late 90s, early noughties, but blogs are useful to AI in that you are providing value, you're providing insight, and you're providing authority. It's a key word for AI. AI likes to see authority signals. So if you have a sales trader and they have a really nice website, but they never blog anything, they never talk about anything, they just talk to their clients and they have a very good relationship with their clients, but they never actually provide any value. Marcus, I see you posting things on LinkedIn all the time. Then Marcus, you're going to get chosen over them. It's very, very simple.
Oh, you broke up then?
I said if you have a sales trainer, for example, who never puts any information online, is very good at what they do, but has a very direct personal relationship with their clients and just gets referred from client to client and never publishes anything, then you, Marcus, who publish stuff on LinkedIn all the time, are going to get picked over that. It's very, very simple because you are showing your authority signals by doing it.
And how does a business stop describing services and start answering buyer problems?
Very simple. Go to AI and say, hey, I run ABC business. Give me a list of 30 typical buyer questions. It's pretty simple. You will be astonished at the speed at which AI can, if you have a good website, can understand what you do and can generate a list of typical buyer questions beyond the ones that you are going to know about. I mean, running the t-shirt business, I know that I'm going to get asked about lead times. I know that I'm going to get asked about, how does the process work? How does the billing work? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to get all those questions. And so I already have those in the FAQ, but I was amazed when I said, you don't even need to say I run ABC business. You can say I work in such and such vertical in this business. What are typical buyer questions that I might be asked in this vertical? And it will generate a whole list of them.
Okay. So you've already mentioned that reviews, case studies, named customers, FAQs, maybe even comparison pages are good evidence.
Mhm.
If you're up against an £800 gorilla in your market, what can smaller specialist firms do to prove their value and get found by AI search engines?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the really big organizations do not need answer engine optimization, AEO, which is effectively the service that we provide, because they have all the entity presence across the internet. So they're going to get recommended regardless. But where smaller firms can compete is on they can differentiate themselves. So the £800 gorilla, maybe they don't give the level of, maybe they do, but maybe they don't give the level of personal service that some people want. So I mentioned the real estate example earlier in where I live here in Florida. There are enormous national chains of realtors, and then there are small independent realtors. Now, the national chains are going to win on just sheer scale, but the independent realtors can do something a little bit different. So there's a realtor here in my local town. He focuses on his tagline is to help our clients build generational wealth through real estate. So it's not just selling houses, selling and buying houses. They do investment and flips and all the rest of it. Now, that's not something that a national real estate chain will do. They won't offer that. The other thing he offers is he will, after they've moved in, he gives them a phone number, and he'll say, if you want to know anything about the local area, give me a call. And so those people get that, and that lasts for life. I mean, obviously after 3 years, I'm pretty sure they're going to know the local area. But if you need any kind of services, we can recommend great tradespeople. Give us a call. That's the kind of service that you're not going to get from the big chains. So you can make that very clear on your website that you clearly differentiate. You can also specify, actually, we only serve a certain county. So to bring you back to Leicestershire, I mean, Leicestershire is right on the border of Northamptonshire. So Market Harbour is right on the border of Northamptonshire. But if I was an estate agent in Leicestershire, you can specify on your website and in the code behind your website, so the AIs really understand it, that you only serve Leicestershire and Northamptonshire. So you can differentiate yourself in that way. You can do it geographically too.
Okay, so if a listener was to audit their own site after this episode, what would be the 5 red flags that tell them that AI probably wouldn't recommend them or even pick up on them?
Crawlability is the one thing that you should check for. So the AIs can tell you that. So when they first crawled Awesomized Teaser, when I asked them to, although they can't do a full crawl, they can at least return an error and say, hey, we're getting a crawl error on these pages or on the site generally. So I cannot see the site. So that would be the first thing I would check. Are you even visible? The other thing you could ask AI is, look at this homepage. Who is it that we serve? Who is our core target market? Our ideal customer. And if it can't tell you that, it's kind of, well, it's kind of fuzzy. I'm not really sure. Then you've probably got a problem, because your website should tell people that from the outset. So that would be another problem. Again, just asking, give me a list of 10. If you don't appear on the list of 10, well, where would I appear? So that isn't a good indicator that you've probably got a problem with your website. And then another indicator, which is you don't even need to do any of that stuff, is just, I would ask you the question, do you have an FAQ page? Or do you have at least FAQs built into your service page? And if you don't, that's a problem.
Okay. So if you've got 30 days and limited budget, what's the practical recovery plan to move from invisible and confusing to at least recommendable?
30 days. I would, well, if you're not even clear. So the reason I call the business clarity is because clarity is the number one thing that AI needs. You have to treat AI as, I think you once described me, Marcus, as a little spectrumy. You have to treat AI as extremely spectrumy. It's extremely spectrumy. It's the most spectrumy person you've ever met. Elon Musk has nothing on AI. What I was talking about with, if you just changed your phone format a little bit, it can, oh, I don't really like that. So if you've got 30 days in limited budget, I would focus on, look at your homepage for a start. Does it clearly tell people who you serve and why? If you haven't got FAQs, get them. If you haven't got a blog, you should probably write one. And then I would conduct the crawl checks with AI. AI can at least tell you whether it's going to get any crawl errors. And I would feed every single one of your page URLs to AI to check all of them. And the only other question I would ask is the other thing. This is not a 30-day thing, but it's kind of a top tip. And I know you don't want to talk about it, Marcus, because it's kind of techie, and I am kind of spectrumy, but schema. Do you have any schema on your website? And if your answer to that question is no or I don't know, you should probably give me a call, because probably need to help you.
So on that note, then, what should a business owner ask their agency or developer tomorrow to know whether the site is technically fit for AI search?
First of all, have you got, he's going to be able to see the human readable bit. So he's going to be able to see the homepage. He's going to be able to see whether you answer those questions. He knows whether he's got an FAQ page, blog page, or the rest of it. The number one thing that AIs will digest is schema. And that's, not going to get too technical, but it's just a form of JSON, which is just a code that you put on the back end of your website. And if you really want to know, this is a real top tip. If you really want to know if your website has any schema on it, go to your website in the browser, hit F12. It's going to open up a scary page. There's developer tools, and you will see in the right-hand page in that new window all of the HTML code that makes up your website. Hit Control F to find, and then type in LD. That's Lima Delta plus sign JSON. LD plus JSON. If it's not up there, you don't have any schema, and you probably should give us a call. But that would be the number one thing that I would do. I would also talk to my developer, again, in terms of making sure the site is AI ready. Check, have they conducted crawlability tests on it? Have they unindexed any orphan pages? So can you guarantee me that there are no orphan pages, no template pages left over from build that are going to get indexed that I don't know about? Because as soon as you put that, it's called lorem ipsum text. As soon as you put that lorem ipsum placeholder text with addresses in Hamburg, you are going to instantly introduce a huge amount of confusion to the models, and you are not going to get recommended.
Okie dokie. Matt, we've come to time, more or less. So in terms of stuff they should delete, orphan pages, any hangover from previous stuff, any lorem ipsum content,
Yep.
broken links.
Yep. Just on that, there's another question where you've just said broken links. If you're asking your digital agency about links, check that they have used the canonical link. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at claritydigitaladvisory.com and you've got claritydigitaladvisory.com/blog. Now, what a lot of developers will do when they build it into the website is they will just put in the link is /blog. AI treats that link /blog as a redirect, which creates noise, which also lowers your trust, because lots and lots of redirects it doesn't like it. It causes entity confusion. So when they put in those links, although you can put in /blog and it will work technically, you should put in the full canonical link, https:// blah, 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 like the full thing. That really matters a lot. It will help the AIs read the model a lot better.
So final question then, where do businesses accidentally train AI to send them the wrong customers?
Okay, I would say ignore all the rules and bits of advice that I've given you. Don't be specific about what you do. Don't say specifically which market you service. Don't give too many answers about questions. Just produce a really nice marketing site. Produce a really nice marketing site, and it'll attract. Well, it probably won't attract much AI. You might get some Google traffic, but and then you could run a load of YouTube ads on it, maybe. If you've got the budget, run some YouTube ads so people can see your YouTube ads and direct you to a marketing site to buy your widget. Now, that will probably be very effective. Now, if you're selling, a cigarette lighter, that's probably fine, because it's a very low involvement purchase. It's a cigarette lighter, who cares? But if you're selling something a little more of a lot higher investment, then that's probably not the right way to go. But that's what I would do. I would just create a generic marketing site full of nonsense with no schema, no real clarity to it, and then I would just get a YouTube channel, or I would pay for YouTube ads and just drive a load of traffic to it.
Okay, I lied. One more question then. How does the business know when it crossed the line from this site needs fixes to this site is structurally buggered, and it's teaching buyers and AI the wrong thing, and patching it will only make the problem persist?
That's a good question, because that's exactly where I was with Awesome Teas. Here's another top tip. Before I answer that question, another top tip. Before you even start to build your website, the platform you build it on really, really matters. WordPress, I've got some bad news for people who have WordPress websites. WordPress is incredibly noisy for AI, and it doesn't matter really. You reach a ceiling with what you can do because there is just so much junk in the what we call the DOM. There's so much junk in there that the AIs can't pass it all and read it quickly. So it just doesn't get. So I would say be very, very careful about the platform that you choose to use.
What kind of platforms should you be using?
I mean, I can't recommend one because it probably depends on your specific circumstances. But I recommend. I don't recommend. I can't recommend it. But I use Webflow. Webflow is a very very good website builder. It leaves a very very clean DOM, which AIs
and
find.
The DOM is
it's the document stands for the document object model. It's basically that big list of HTML that I mentioned earlier and CSS and JavaScript that goes into producing your web page.
So that creates a clean one.
Very, very clean, very short, very easy, very easy for AI to read. So it's just a much better system. The current Awesome Teas website is on WordPress, a long-term project. Move it off WordPress, move on to something else.
So back to the question then. When do you realize patching is not going to work and you need to move?
You're doing everything you can. I don't really want to say this because it's going to sound like a big plug, but and I don't mean it to sound. But I reached this conclusion by using the tool that I developed to assess the website. I had done everything that I could do. I was working with different models to say what should we recommend, what do you recommend to do this. I built out all these extra pages. I put a blog in. I put the FAQs in. I'd even changed the front page, and you're still scoring in the 60s. And at that point, I realized it doesn't really matter what I do. I've got to change the platform because the premise is fundamentally broken. But I don't mean this to sound like a sales pitch, Max, because that's not really what it is. But the system that I built and that I use in Clarity Digital Advisory now will tell you that. It's going to give you an assessment, and it's going to say, it's not outright going to say you should rebuild your website. But if you're scoring in the 40s, you got a lot of work to do to get right up there. So you probably want to think about just rebuilding your website at that point because it's probably going to be cheaper and better for the long term. But so I would love to say that there is a way of doing that without that kind of assessment tool. But honestly, I don't really think there is, unless you just want to simply rely on, continuing to update your website and then using those top 10 fonts for your specific industry. You could maybe do it that way, and you might see yourself moving up the list. But it depends how you want to approach it. If you are prepared to rebuild your website, it's probably going to be a better. It's not a service that we offer, by the way. It's probably going to be a better option for the long term.
Okay, excellent, Matt. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your insights. How can people get hold of you?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. I know this has been a bit more of a techie nerdy thing, and I do feel like it's kind of a different episode. Hopefully I haven't put too many people to sleep. Hopefully they've got some value from it. The best way to contact me is info@claritydigitaladvisory.com, or just go to claritydigitaladvisory.com, fill in the contact form and send me an email. If you're having problems with your website, or if you're kind of having that moment of how on earth do we get AI to recommend us, we should maybe have a chat. We work in the US, the UK, and Europe as well.
Excellent. Matt, thank you once again.
Thank you very much for having me, Marcus.
So in the meantime, stay safe, happy selling, and go and do the work. There's no substitute for doing the research, and go looking for bad news. Run to the sound of gunfire and go and prove your current hypothesis wrong. If you think that your website is doing the job, chances are it's not, and it can always be better. So happy selling, stay safe. Bye-bye.